I was 17 the night the town went silent, the kind of silence that makes your blood turn to glass. Snow hammered the streets of Willow Bend, Ohio, until the stoplights spilled their colors into nothing, and the power blinked out like a tired eye. My daughter, 6 pounds of miracle and raw need, slept curled against my ribs in the back seat of a Buick that used to be my mother's, and now was home, dresser, nursery, chapel. The heater coughed lukewarm air. My phone stood at 3%, a single sliver of blue against a winter that felt personal. The sky was a lid. The roads were gone. I kept thinking about how, only months before, I'd been a varsity sprinter who could outrun anything. Rumors, lunchroom stares, even time. Now time had caught me and pressed me against the glass like frost. People think teen moms are careless, but if you'd seen the spreadsheet in my head, bottles, wipes, ounces of formula, ounces of patience, ounces of courage, you'd have called it a battle plan. I'd learned how to count like the rent depended on it because it did. I knew which cashier double-scanned WIC checks without scowling, which bus driver waited the extra 5 seconds so I could wrestle the stroller up the steps, which night shift manager at the all-night diner would slide a blueberry pancake into my to-go bag and call it, oops. That one fell apart. I knew the way the town's kindness lived under its judgments, like a creek under ice. The father, Ty, had disappeared into a silence as loud as this storm. I still had his hoodie, the one that smelled like engine grease and Old Spice and promises. If I pulled it over my knees, I could almost forget that I'd watched the back of him disappear into the passenger seat of a truck I didn't recognize. A girl with smooth hair and no stretch marks laughing at something that didn't include me. "You'll ruin your life," someone had hissed at my locker. "You'll trap him." The truth was smaller and meaner. He ran because I stayed. I stayed for the appointments and the early contractions, and the way the nurse said, "Breathe, Harper," like my name was a command to keep going. The storm made a chapel of the Buick. Every sound was magnified. The soft goat bleat of my daughter's breath, the snap of the wipers fighting snow, the rumble of a plow that never turned down our street because Pine Hollow apartments didn't make lists. I watched my baby's chest rise and fall. When she startled, her fists opened like white stars, and my heart did the thing it does now. A quiet explosion, an alarm and a prayer. I told her a story I hadn't earned yet, that there was a plan, that the world was not a machine designed to grind girls into cautionary tales. "There's another plan for us," I whispered, as if saying it could carve it into the night. People always say, "You're so strong," as if strength is a choice you get to make. As if I wouldn't trade every ounce of it for a warm apartment, a decent crib, a grandmother who didn't whisper, "Shame," into the kitchen phone when she thought I couldn't hear. Strength felt less like a muscle, and more like a wall you learn to lean on because there's nowhere else to stand. The snow came sideways, and the phone slipped to 2%, and the baby snuffled deeper into sleep. And I thought, if I close my eyes, we disappear. That's when a shape in the white moved toward the Buick, slow, deliberate, and a fist tapped the window. I froze. The shape lowered a scarf. A woman's face came into view, older, eyes like lit windows. She mouthed, "You okay?" I hesitated, every warning I'd ever been given thundering, "Don't open doors, don't trust strangers." But my baby stirred, and something in me understood that sometimes the only way out is through someone else's kindness. I cracked the window, cold knifed in. "You can't stay out here," the woman said. "Come on. I live 2 buildings over. We've got heat." I searched her face for the lie. All I found was a ripple of urgency, the kind that looks like love in motion. I should have asked questions. I should have demanded proof. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I tucked my daughter into the sling I wore like armor, grabbed the diaper bag, and stepped into the storm, following a stranger through a world that wanted us erased. I believed for a breath that maybe this night would be the first page of the better story. I didn't know yet that the same woman who offered me warmth would open a door that led somewhere I wasn't ready to go, and that the warmth had a cost I couldn't see. But the worst was yet to come. My name is Harper May Collins, and I turned 17 in a town where church bells ring loud enough to drown out whispers, until the whispers become the sermon. I grew up in Willow Bend, a river-wrinkled patch of Ohio where everybody knows who bought a secondhand lawnmower and who's been buying trouble. We had 1 high school, 1 community college, 3 diners with the same menu, and a Walmart that doubled as town square. If you're watching this now, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. the exact city. I want to see this story travel farther than I did. I want to pin your towns on the map I keep folded in the glove box, a paper future waiting to be unfolded. How does a girl become a headline? It wasn't a single night. It was a slow-motion season. The late period I excused as track stress, the pharmacy pregnancy test I bought with quarters and shame, the way my hands trembled so hard I had to sit on them. 2 pink lines bloomed like a bruise. I didn't cry. I took out my phone and opened the Notes app and started counting. Weeks, appointments, the cost of prenatal vitamins, the distance from my math final to the OB's office. If life was a race, I was going to run it with numbers. No one tells you how much math there is in survival. Telling my mom was like stepping in front of a train and trying to negotiate. She stood by the sink, the dishwater going cold around her wrists, and stared through me at a version of me she'd worked so hard to build. Honors classes, fast starts, college brochures curling on the counter like wilting flowers. "We don't have room for this," she said, meaning the baby, meaning my needs, meaning the noise of disappointment that had already filled the house. "You made a choice." I wanted to say that yes, I had. I chose to breathe. I chose to carry. I chose to stop pretending that the future is a straight line. But she walked away, and I learned the first brutal lesson of motherhood. You can love someone and still be uninvited from their life. Ty texted, "We'll figure it out." He didn't mean we. He meant the future version of him who might develop a spine later. He meant a plan written on disappearing ink. Within a week, he'd pivoted to silence, then to rumors, then to a girl who posted pictures of her waffles with the caption, "No drama, just syrup." I deleted his contact. Then I scrolled his feed until it bled into the same feed every girl sees after a breakup. The tidy lie that your pain is solitary. I wasn't solitary. I was 2 heartbeats in a world that said I had made myself a burden. School changed, not with a bang, but with a rearranging of air. Teachers stopped calling on me as much. The track coach mumbled something about liability. A girl from youth group pressed a brochure into my hand. It wasn't about prenatal care. It was about shame disguised as help. I found out later there were laws, Title IX, that meant I had a right to stay in school, to have bathroom breaks, to keep my place on the track team if the doctor cleared me. Nobody volunteered that. I had to dig for it while Googling, "When does morning sickness end?" at 2 a.m., eating saltines and whispering to the lump under my ribs, "Don't make me vomit in first period again." Reality gets expensive fast. I learned the names people are embarrassed to say out loud and say them anyway. WIC for formula and fruit. SNAP when the paychecks vanish into rent. Medicaid when the nurse says, "We'll bill insurance," and you need to pretend that's not a joke. I filled out forms with boxes that didn't fit me and sat in waiting rooms with mothers who taught me how to fold guilt into a small square and put it in your pocket and walk anyway. I learned which offices had free diapers and which had strings attached. Strings like mandatory prayer or a photo for their newsletter, a trophy of your humiliation. The woman from the storm, the one with window-light eyes, was named Isabel Ramirez. She lived 2 buildings over with her grandson, and a parakeet that swore in Spanish at the evening news. Her apartment smelled like cumin and pine sol and survived. She made me hot tea and asked my daughter's name. "Lily," I said, and it sounded too soft for the world. She nodded like softness could be a weapon if you sharpened it right. "You can sleep here tonight," she said. "We'll figure out tomorrow in the morning." That became a promise I clung to. Figure out tomorrow in the morning. One day at a time until they stack into something that looks like a life. If you're still with me, if you can feel the cold off that Buick window and the ache between my shoulder blades from carrying a world that wasn't made with room for me, hit subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me the first job you ever worked for less than your worth, because here's the part that gets whispered. They don't just make it hard. They make it so hard you think you deserve it. And the only way I learned that was by surviving the kind of week that split my life in 2. I thought the snow was the test. The real test came when the sky cleared, and the bills did not, and the phone call that landed 2 mornings later would turn our little survival routine into a countdown I couldn't stop. The worst was yet to come. The morning after the blizzard, the world looked polished and mean. Sun on snow, a glare that asked, "What now?" I had an answer. Hustle. I wrapped Lily in the thrift store carrier and walked to the diner on Lincoln and Main, the one with a neon coffee cup that buzzed like a hornet. I asked for the closing shift. The owner, a man everybody called Coach because he still wore his whistle like a talisman, looked at my belly pouch and my daughter's hat with the ears and said, "Can you balance plates and a baby? Watch me," I said, and he shrugged, which is Ohio for blessing. Night shifts blur time. The diner was a carousel of truckers, nurses between rounds, guys who talked to their knuckles and tipped in nickels. I learned the choreography. Coffee pot in the left hand, menu in the right, Emma, the other waitress, catching my eye and raising a brow that meant, "Table 4 is lonely, bring extra syrup." Lily slept in a car seat behind the counter. Sometimes a customer would lean over, see her eyelashes, and lay a $5 bill like a prayer in the tip jar. Sometimes they said, "Shouldn't that baby be home?" And I'd smile because you cannot punch a question. The first paycheck came like a bandage on a broken leg. Rent at Pine Hollow didn't pause. Utilities wanted deposits. Formula wanted formulas. Ounces per day times days per month equals panic. I stretched everything. Watered down soup. Cut dryer sheets in half. Learned how to pray over a stack of bills until it looked like a house of cards I could blow down with good news. I applied for a childcare subsidy, then waited on a list that was more of a labyrinth. "You need a job to get childcare," the clerk said. "You need childcare to keep a job," I said. She shrugged. "The system is a snake that eats its own tail and asks you to season it." At school, I saw my old life moving on. The track team posed for a photo I wasn't in. College acceptance letters bloomed like paper flowers in the hallway display case. My counselor, Miss Reed, pulled me aside. "You have rights," she said quietly, like it was contraband. She printed a sheet about Title IX and pregnancy. "If anyone gives you trouble, they can answer to me." Miss Reed had a way of looking at me that made me feel not like a statistic, but like a student again. She didn't flinch at crying or spit polish my choices into something inspirational. She said, "You can be angry and still be excellent." It landed inside me like a key turning. Then the betrayal came sideways, like most betrayals do. Coach called me into the office. "Another server complained," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Health code. Baby behind the counter." I wanted to say we'd scrubbed those counters until they shone with Lysol and penance. I wanted to say Lily was cleaner than some of the drunks at booth 6. What I said was, "What if I leave her with my neighbor?" "Then it's fine," he said, already looking at the schedule. "Tonight. Rules can be moved. Girls cannot." I ran back to Isabel's. She opened the door before I could knock twice. "I need help," I said, and the words tasted like rust. "Say what you need," she said, "because pride doesn't buy formula." I asked her to watch Lily. She said yes, like she'd been waiting to. That night, my pockets were heavier. That night, I felt the dangerous relief of a plan working. That night, Lily screamed for 3 hours in someone else's arms, and I washed coffee cups to the rhythm of a baby I couldn't soothe. Success can feel like failure with lipstick. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday between first period and the edge of giving up. "Miss Collins," a voice said, "this is the county office. We're reviewing your SNAP case." My stomach turned. "You reported 0 child support. We've opened a referral to establish paternity and support. You'll need to come in." My mouth went dry. I saw Ty's face in my head, not because I wanted money from him, but because I didn't want him back in our orbit at all. His silence had been a gift wrapped in cowardice. Now the county wanted to return it. I went anyway. A woman named Darlene with perfect nails explained forms that smelled like paper cuts. "He'll be notified," she said. "There'll be a hearing if he contests." I thought about the photo of him with the girl and the waffles. I thought about the way he'd touched my belly exactly once, like it might explode in his palm. "What if he wants custody?" I asked. "He's got rights," she said, which is the kind of truth that feels like a threat. I walked out with a stack of paper heavy enough to be a weapon. I also walked out with a new knowledge. The system can force you to invite the past back in, no matter how carefully you change the locks. Nights got longer. Lily got colicky. Sleep became a currency we traded in size. I flunked a geometry quiz and watched the teacher's face fold into disappointment he tried to hide. "You can make it up," he said. Miss Reed found a teen parent support group at the community center. We sat in a circle, our babies like moons tugging the tides of our attention, and told the truth nobody wanted framed. Sometimes we hated it. Sometimes love and exhaustion wrestled until both were bruised. "You're not broken," the facilitator said. "You're busy surviving." It landed like scripture. Then, as if the world were testing the limits of my good faith, the Buick died. January's leftover ice chewed something essential. The mechanic's estimate was larger than my belief in anything. I cried in the bathroom at work, face over the trash can, quiet as a confession. Emma found me and handed over her car keys. "Take mine until Friday," she said, like it was nothing. It was everything. I drove home with my heart in my throat, promising the universe I would someday be the woman who had a spare car to lend, a spare life to loan. The letter came the next day, in an envelope with the school district's logo. My breath stuttered before I even slid it open. Inside was a notice. I'd been nominated for a local scholarship sponsored by the hospital auxiliary for students pursuing careers in healthcare. Miss Reed had submitted an essay I'd written about the night Lily was born. The loneliness. The nurse named Tasha who practiced saying, "You're doing brave work," like a blood type. My hands shook as I read the words I'd written in the margins of exhaustion and saw them reflected back as possibility. And yet, the same mail batch held a past due notice from the power company, with language that sounded like eviction. 2 pieces of paper, 2 futures, both urgent, both true. I told myself I could juggle it, the nights at the diner, the mornings at school, the afternoons filling out forms with my left hand, while my right bounced a screaming miracle. I told myself I could out-hustle statistics, but statistics are patient. They wait in the corner like debt collectors. The weekend after the scholarship letter, the weather turned feral again. The lights flickered, the heat stumbled, and Lily's breath took on a sound I'd never heard. Wet, rattling, wrong. I held her close. She went limp for a second that lasted forever. That's when I learned the difference between fear and terror. Fear is what you feel when the bills stack. Terror is a baby not breathing. I dialed 911 with hands that didn't feel like mine. The operator said help was coming. The snow said, "We'll see." The worst was yet to come. The sirens were snow-muffled, distant, unreal. I counted Lily's chest movements. 1, 2, none. Every number a scream my throat wouldn't make. Isabel was already at the door, boots on, her parakeet squawking curses like a chorus. "Give her to me," she said, and her hands were steady where mine were lightning. "You call Coach. Ask for Emma. We need a ride to the ER if those trucks can't make it." I dialed, words tumbling. "Hold on," Emma said. "I'm coming." The line went dead, service flicker, and the walls groaned with winter. We wrapped Lily in blankets and ran into a world that had become a single color. I could barely see the numbers on the apartment doors. My lungs burned cold. We reached the lot, and that's when the plow, late, miraculous, turned into Pine Hollow and trapped us between berms of compacted ice. I waved my arms, cried out, but the driver kept going, blinkers clicking like a metronome of indifference. "We're walking," Isabel said. 2 blocks to St. Luke's. We can do 2 blocks. 2 blocks in summer are nothing. In a blizzard with an infant who might be slipping away, they are an ocean with no boat. We waded into the street, visibility hanging by a thread. Halfway there, headlights swung toward us. For a heartbeat, I thought the universe had sent a miracle shaped like Emma's Corolla. It was Ty's truck. He rolled the window down, hair tucked under a beanie with a beer logo. The girl with the waffles was in the passenger seat, wide-eyed. "Harper," he said, as if we were a coincidence. "We need a ride," I said, voice flat as shock. He stared at the bundle in my arms. "Is that your daughter?" Isabel snapped. "Later, now drive." He hesitated, a lifetime of almost in his eyes. Then he unlocked the doors. We climbed in. The heat was a wall I could have worshipped. The ride to St. Luke's lasted forever, and was over too fast. In the ER, fluorescent lights made everyone look guilty. A nurse took Lily from me like she was lifting a burning thing out of my hands. "Respiratory distress," she told the doctor. "Possible RSV." Words piled up. Oxygen, suction, monitor. My own breath became a negotiation with God, with gravity, with the version of me that didn't fall apart in front of strangers. Ty hovered, the girl hovering beside him, both of them in winter coats that still smelled like the outside world. "I didn't know," he said. "You didn't ask," I said, and my voice came out not as a knife but as ice. He flinched. The girl tried to look small. In the corner, Isabel prayed in Spanish, each word like a bead on a chain, a litany I wanted to string around my neck and never take off. A doctor with tired eyes and kind hands explained, Lily needed support, not intubation. Yet, they'd watch her, keep her oxygen up, see if her little lungs could find rhythm. "You did the right thing," he said to me, the 5 most expensive words in America, and the 5 I needed most. In the next bay, a monitor flatlined and then sang again. The world is a chorus of almosts. The social worker appeared like weather, soft smile, clipboard armor. "I'm Kara," she said. "We have a medical legal partnership here. If you need help with housing or utilities or benefits, we can talk." I wanted to laugh and sob. "Can you stop time?" I asked. "No," she said, "but I can savor what it does to you." It wasn't a joke. It was a promise of attention in a system designed to forget you. Hours stretched. The oxygen cannula left 2 tiny commas on Lily's cheeks. I sat so still my bones felt like furniture. Ty paced, then crouched, then stood. Finally, he spoke. "My mom says we should get a lawyer," he said, voice low. "About what?" I asked, but I already knew. "Custody," he said, and the syllables detonated. The girl beside him stared at the floor as if it might swallow her. Isabel rose like a storm. "You will not," she whispered. "Heat in winter. Not here. Not now." A nurse intervened, handing me a cup of water I didn't remember asking for. "You two can step out," she told Ty and his girl with the authority of a woman who's cleaned more messes than we can imagine. They left. My heart kept shivering, but now with a new cold. This wasn't just a medical crisis. It was a custody ambush staged in a fluorescent theater. Systems don't just fail you. They invite your past to sit in the front row and heckle. Kara, the social worker, came back with a stack of forms and a softness that was not pity. "We can help you file for a temporary protection from harassment if you need, and we can fast-track a utility assistance grant," she said. "Also, there's a scholarship I want to talk to you about. I read your essay." She had my words. Miss Reed must have sent them everywhere like seed. "I'm not anything," I said, "because that's what exhaustion does. It edits your identity down to breath." "You're a mother," she said, "and a student, and a hurricane. We can use all 3. At dawn, Lily's numbers were up. She sucked her fist like a promise she intended to keep. The doctor said the word stabilized, and I watched it hang in the air like a balloon I was afraid to touch. Ty never came back. He texted, "Hope she's okay," which is a kind of betrayal that comes wrapped as a benediction. I put the phone face down. I held my daughter's hand and counted her breaths like money. Then Kara gave me one more paper. A simple 1-page letter with a logo I'd never seen. A community foundation I didn't know existed. "They were moved by your essay," she said. "If you're willing to train as a nursing assistant while you finish high school, there's a stipend, childcare vouchers, and a transportation card." I read it twice. Then the lights flickered again. Then the monitor beeped a warning I didn't understand. Then someone ran, and for a second everything turned white as the storm outside. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The worst was yet to come. It wasn't Lily. It was the baby in the next bay whose monitor had learned the sound of panic. Our nurse slid the curtain half closed, giving me privacy that felt like grace. My bones thawed. We were not out of the woods. We were simply in a clearing. But in the clearing, there was a path I hadn't seen. When the discharge papers came the next afternoon, follow-up appointments, humidifier instructions, watch for retractions, Kara handed me a packet thick as a second chance. "This is not charity," she said. "This is investment." On the way home, Emma drove us in her Corolla, which smelled like French fries and mascara. "You scared the hell out of me," she said, eyes straight ahead. "You showed up," I said. "You always show up." We passed the diner. Coach was out front spreading salt, transformed into a man who understood ice is personal. He waved. He didn't ask for a shift swap. He said, "Take the week. Mercy is a weather pattern. When it arrives, it changes the shape of everything." Back at Pine Hollow, the heat felt like a luxury we wouldn't lose. Not that week, anyway. Isabel had hung a strand of paper stars above the makeshift crib. "Para suerte," she said. For luck. We needed more than luck. But I took it. I taped the scholarship letter inside the kitchen cabinet where I kept the cheap cereal and the expensive hope. I filled out more forms. I wrote thank you notes that were actually love letters to a network I didn't know I had. To Miss Reed for making my story legible. To Kara for translating the system into human. To Emma for praying with her keys. To the nurse who wrote brave work on her badge like a spell. Then I started. The training program met in the hospital's basement classroom, linoleum floors and a whiteboard forever stained with muscle diagrams. I learned how to take a blood pressure cuff's whisper and turn it into numbers that meant action. I learned to change a bed with someone still in it. I learned to hold a stranger's hand without making it a promise I couldn't keep. Meanwhile, I finished high school assignments in the space between feedings. wrote essays at 3 a.m., with the glow of my phone as lamp, and made formula with a precision that would shame a chemistry lab. Exhaustion became background noise. Purpose became the song I could hear, even when the world got loud. There were more twists, because life respects neither outlines nor tired girls. The paternity notice landed and Ty reappeared, clean-shaven and confused, with a mother who smelled like desperation and Epsom salt. They asked for visitation, and I asked for respect. The magistrate listened to facts like they were coins, and divided them evenly. Supervised visits were ordered at the community center, and I stood in a hallway pretending not to listen to my own child laugh at a joke I didn't tell. The first time, I cried in the bathroom so quietly the hand dryer didn't hear me. But then the program stipend hit, and the child care voucher came through, and Lily started at a daycare where the teachers called the babies scholars, like it was a prophecy. I caught myself smiling at bus windows. I caught myself saying we, and meaning me and my daughter, and a whole constellation of women who'd decided that help is not a 4-letter word. I caught myself wanting things bigger than survival. A tiny porch, a bigger bookshelf, a job with scrubs and a badge, and a nameplate that didn't apologize. Graduation came on a June evening that tasted like rain and electricity. I wore white under my gown and did my makeup in the cracked mirror of the Buick door. Miss Reed found me in the lineup and adjusted my cap like a mother. "Take your time on that stage," she said. "Make them wait." When they called Harper May Collins, I walked like the floor could feel it. The gym roared. Somewhere a baby squealed, and I knew that sound like my own breath. I had planned to accept the diploma and keep walking. Instead, I stopped at the edge of the stage and turned to the stands, searching until the world snapped into focus. Isabel waving a bouquet of grocery store lilies, Emma whistling like a siren, Kara recording with a grin, Coach clapping louder than the band, and Lily on a hip, her hand opening and closing like a star being born again. After the ceremony, a local reporter asked for a quote. She wanted the inspirational version, the tidy arc. I told her the truth instead. "I'm not a miracle," I said. "I'm proof that when a system finally does one thing right, a girl can do the rest." The story ran under a headline that made me wince. Teen mom turns Tide. But the comments section surprised me. "I'm watching from Phoenix. Keep going. Brooklyn here. We see you. Cedar Rapids. Subscribed." It turns out you can build a map from strangers, and their names are exit signs. Here's the twist you didn't see coming because I didn't either. That scholarship letter I taped inside the cereal cabinet? It wasn't the end. It was a key to a door I hadn't believed was for me. 2 months into the hospital job, a patient coded in the hallway, an old man with a tattoo of a swallow on his wrist and a mouth full of almost said things. The nurse shouted, "Ambu bag!" and I was there before I knew I'd moved. The muscle memory from that night in the blizzard kicked in. Count breaths, steady hands, say the person's name like a rope you're throwing across a ravine. We brought him back. Later, when I walked to the bus, the sky breaking into pink, I realized I wanted to run toward emergencies, not away. I applied for the EMT training the hospital offered on weekends. I wrote the essay like a confession. The night the world went white, and I learned what terror tastes like. They said yes. This is the part where I should tell you that everything got easy. It didn't. I still argue with bills that lie. I still make peace with sleep like we're estranged cousins. I still park the Buick facing downhill because the battery likes gravity. But when the radio crackles respiratory distress, 2 blocks from Pine Hollow, and I pull on gloves and step into the night, I feel the long, quiet thread that ties my little life to something bigger. The plan I prayed into the cold. The plan that sounded like a lie until it wasn't. If you've stayed with me, if you've heard the wipers, felt the snow, counted the breaths, subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. The street, the city, the country. Tell me the hardest thing you carried and the hand that helped lift it. Because I used to think survival was a solo sport. Now I know it's a relay. And the baton is belief. I'm passing it to you. And if you're 17, and the world has already told you who you get to be, hear me. You are not a cautionary tale. You are a plot twist. You are the reason the ending changes. Life had another plan for me. It has one for you, too. The credits haven't rolled. The lights haven't come up. The music is swelling, and there is one more reveal I haven't told you yet. One more door I'm about to open. But the worst was yet to come. And then, somehow, so was the best.